Hey folks, how's it going? RedMaster, and welcome back to another tier list video. Now, last time we did a tier list, we looked at the epic cards in Cards and Castles, and today gonna go right down the line of rarities with the rare cards. Now, there are a lot of entries for this. I think over 89 different rare cards, so a lot of content to get through. So it is gonna be slightly faster than I think I would normally do, but it is what it is. It's just a lot of cards that I want to rank, so we gotta speed it along somehow. So with that being said, let's not delay any further and get right in to the tier list. Alright folks, and here is our tier list setup for the video. Now, if you are new here and may not be aware of what our categories are, pretty simple. A, B, and C are just like how you would find any sort of tier list, but the S and F tiers are considered to be take my shards and keep your shards. If a card is in the S tier, it's usually recommended that you try to grab them ASAP for your collection because they are indeed very powerful and very strong cards, while of course the bottom tier being keep your shards, ones that we recommend that you shard immediately if you want to help grow your collection, or, you know, just stay away from them when you're looking to craft some specific cards here. So with that out of the way here, let's get into our first card, the first being Acolyte. Now, to be fair, I think Acolyte might be our first A tier card. Now, a bit of a shock potentially, but I do think this is an A tier worthy card because it is very closely associated to the Wizard, a very powerful 3-drop ranged unit that can come out of the board here. And the reason being is they both share a very common factor between the two, and that is the 4 HP. 4 HP, not exactly easy to remove that early in the game, aside from having a blue firebolt. And even as you progress further into the game, there are a lot of spells that deal maybe 3 damage or 2, and things that kind of, you know, don't exactly take away the threat of either Wizard or Acolyte here. And on top of that, Acolyte does get to spawn some zombies, so if you can get this guy a little bit beefy and have him as a walking attacking summoner, it can be very useful to help generate your swarm very quickly or very easily. And I know we do have the Unholy Altar right here, so speaking of swarm, I do have to kind of put this in the B tier. Now, as a spawner, it is pretty powerful. Of course, all spawners are probably going to be maybe above B tier. Now, maybe reconsidering Altar there, but you know what? It's fine. For now, Altar will be in the B tier. It is a very powerful structure. However, the downside is that the zombies do come out of it sluggish and slow, so they're not really able to do a whole lot off of the spawning per se. But when you get them going here, when you have a conga line of dudes, it becomes a lot easier to deal with. So our little swarm package of zombies here, I think, starting us off quite well. B and A, just feels like it makes sense there. And we move on to Adaptive Armor, our first trap card. There are a lot of trap cards actually in this rotation, if you will. But of course, this is going to be our first F tier card. Honestly, Adaptive Armor is pretty stinky. It only gives a unit 3 HP. The Spirit Link can be nice, but it doesn't feel like Spirit Link is very utilized too much in this game. Sure, it's very good. Things like Mana Core and the Archer Liana can make great use of the Spirit Link effect here, but giving it to another unit here kind of feels hard to do. And of course, if you're trying to get it on the right one, it can be very easily outmaneuvered by another card. You know, a card that, you know, say you have a rat on the board here and it takes a Spirit Link and a 3 HP, great. What is that going to do in the long run? So, it's not a great trap card, hence why you should probably shard it once you grab it. Following that, you've got Arc Fire here, a neat little 2 gold spell that of course can deal 2 damage, but 4 if you have a mage. I think this is going to be another B tier card as well. I mean, it's a removal here, a cheaper blue firebolt if you have the mage support to do it. Mage support, like Acolyte here, like Wizard, can be played very early on to make this Arc Fire a bit more dangerous. And yeah, it's just a good removal card. It is potentially 4 damage out of the gate, so yeah. Following that, you've got Dwarven Archives in the well, I was going to say 2 gold slot. It's 2 gold. I don't know what I was going with that. Anyways, Dwarven Archive, the 2 gold, draw 1, but draw 2 if you have a dwarf out on board. I mean, I might just have to put it in C tier. I mean, it's nothing super extraordinary. It is draw, which is like pretty important. But of course, if you only have, you know, the single card, it's just a cycle for one. You're not getting the really big value unless you're seeing some dwarves, and the dwarves themselves are few and far between. So, I mean, it's a card. It's not a F tier card by any means, because of course it is draw value. But yeah, I don't know. It just kind of feels like it's not doing a hell of a lot in its position here. So with that being said, Dwarven Archives will be our first C tier. Moving on the line though, you got the Suit of Armor. Suit of Armor, of course, another, in my opinion, F tier card. I mean, it's really just a meme. It's a joke card. I mean, you've got the dex running replacement technique, right? And things like that to make it more powerful. And of course, the Secret Awaken ability, which I think might have been purged by now, if I can recall. It might not be purged. You might still have the Secret Awaken for Suit of Armor, but it just feels like a joke card. And if you're really looking to kind of build competitive deck and, you know, have a good collection early on, Armor is not going to be the card that helps you achieve that collection. So that is what it is there. Next up, we've got the Southport Assassin. Assassin going to be another one of the cards that visits the C tier. Its removal, it can be a way for Awaken cards or Awaken decks in the green to have this sort of special multi-removal element, but realistically, it is a card. Its stat lines aren't great, sitting at a 1/3. Normally, you're keeping it in the back because you do want to pop it multiple times. You are running it. It kind of just feels like a, you know, iffy card. One that could do more, not an F tier, because it is flat out removal. But yeah, I don't think it really does a hell of a lot anymore anyways. It just kind of exists. So, and speaking of C, another card to join them will be the Baby Dino. Now, Baby Dino has some great applications within Dino focused decks, being the catalyst for things like turn 6 Dino Nest, or just being able to, you know, heal shenanigans with the T-Rexes, things of that nature. But, I mean, it is, at the end of the day, a small little 1/1 body that is really just running around here. It can get multi-buffed by Dinosaur Nest and other babies and all that, but I don't know. It feels like if you're not playing a dinosaur deck, you're not running Baby Dino anywhere else. You might have the argument to push it up to B, and that could be okay, but I don't know. I feel like Baby Dino is going to have to be a C for me. Next up, you've got the Dire Badger moving down the list here. Badger, I think, also has to be probably, it's a tough one. This is a tough one. I might have to, I might get some disagreements on this. Oh, I hit the Control Z for that. I don't know what I did there. I think it has to be an A tier card, Dire Badger. It is a chunky body on turn 5. The stealth can be very useful, and of course, being able to awaken and redo that ability can be super valuable for not just Awaken decks, but a multitude of different decks that want to use that maybe stealth factor to their advantage. Things like Coruscope can use this as their like substitute Koro per se, or decks that want to OTK with multi-strike can use Badger as a body to get into place for said multi-strike. You have a couple different applications, in my opinion, I think are quite useful. And yeah, I just feel like he should be an A tier card. I think he, again, could get some disagreements on that. I could see him in the B tier as well, but I don't know. For the most part, Badger at A makes sense because he had such more utility than just being an Awaken card for the dojo draw. So I think I'm going to leave him there. That makes the, I think that's the right call. Following that, you've got the Battle Rage, the 1 gold minor spell, giving a damage unit +2/+2. Again, I'm gonna have to go F tier on this one. Most likely, I mean, just because you have a lot of other spells that give a +2/+2 without having it to be damaged in the first place. The card that I kind of compare this very closely to is Blessing of the Trends, the 1 gold that gives a +2/+2 in Druids, but let me subtract some movement here, and I think that's better because it is just a +2/+2 for anything. You don't have to have a damage restriction on it. You can just play it, play the unit, move the unit, and then follow with the +2/+2, so that way you kind of work around that movement limitation of the -1 from Blessing. Meanwhile, Battle Rage, I mean, it's fine, it's a +2/+2, but I don't know. The fact you have to have some damage on your unit first here, you could also risk losing your unit entirely because of that damage, or having so much damage to the point where it doesn't feel like the +2/+2 is worth it. If I bring a unit down to like 3/1 and give it the +2/+2. It becomes a 5/3. It's very easy to get removed in that case. So, yeah, I don't feel like it's really worth the slot in your main deck. And then following up next, you've got Cockatrice. God. Honestly, I'm going to be a bit unbiased here and go probably C tier for Cockatrice. I think the 4/4 body is what kind of saves this from being an F tier card. But the last will of losing said card is pretty devastating, especially with decks that usually run this around the aggro territory. If they are losing a card out of the gate here by turn 3, 4, and losing that advantage, it could be pretty catastrophic. Being able to, or having the option to lose probably one of your best follow-up cards in your hand is a risk that I don't think should be worth taking in the most part. Even if you're getting a 4/4 body, we see nowadays that global buffs are able to bring a ton of units into that 4 attack range and even higher. And yeah, you could argue that, you know, well, then you can make Cockatrice a 5/5 or a 6/6, but you might have already lost your global because of the discard. You might not have all you might have in your hand, but that's like a dumb. That's a dumb argument. That is entirely dumb. But yeah, I don't know. It just feels like Cockatrice is not worth the slot because you do risk that, you know, that disadvantage here. But again, the 4/4 body, I understand why people want to use that. It is great as an aggro tool and probably will continue to be great as an aggro tool. It's just the discard can be a very heavy price to pay for such a body that can be pretty easily popped the further you get into a game. So, yeah. Following that, you've got Holy Bulwark. I'm going to keep this one short and simple. F tier card. It's just a +1 health to a small area by your castle. Really nothing too monumental there. It is a minor spell for the sake of a minor spell existing, so it doesn't really have to have a use beyond that. So again, going to be an F tier card. I wouldn't recommend including it in your deck options. All right, and next up on the list, we will see Call Beast. Now, Call Beast to me probably feels like a B tier card. Being able to pull things like Bear turn 3 is pretty big. Bear Hog is okay. Wolf, probably not what you want to go for if you're not running a Beast deck. But hey, I think out of all the options, they're not terrible. So I think in my mind, Call Beast kind of deserves that B tier slot. You can have the possibility of ramping out a big bear early. And I like, you know, the Beast pool. I'm a little biased on this one, but I do think the Beast pool archetype or range of cards is pretty big, pretty powerful in this game. So for that reason, I'm going to have to give Call Beast the good old B tier. Following that, though, you got Cannonball Barrage. Barrage is an interesting one. I think... Oh, I'm moving things. Oh, I added Combustion here. I don't want to add Combustion. Where was Combustion? I'll put you there, I guess. Where did I put Cannonball? See, this is what I mean by my mouse really messing up today. I think Cannonball Barrage has to be a good C tier card for the list here. Cannonball Barrage being at 5 gold, I think really dampens this potential. But to stun 3 units completely for a turn is pretty nice. And what's kind of saving it from that F tier is that you can do up to 3 units in a single Cannonball Barrage play. Being able to kind of knock out 3 units is important, especially if you want to set up for future turns or future actions in the next turns. Whatever the case may be, I think Barrage is fine, but nothing really above B tier. It's okay. It is okay. It's an okay card, per se. Next up, you've got Church. Church going to be our first... Oh, again. Come on. Hello. Lord. Church is going to be our first S tier card, in my opinion. Church is a pain in the ass to deal with in most games if it is tucked away. It can continue to heal the castle, work away a lot of the damage that might have happened to it over the course of a game here. And considering that the Church is 4 HP, it is very hard to remove by outside sources like burns. Pretty much the only way you're removing the Church from your hand, I think, is Blue Firebolt or Reclaim. I mean, Reclaim isn't really removing the building, you're just, you know, manipulating it to your side of the board here. But yeah, I think Church, a very powerful card. Its healing can do massive effects on a game here. It can completely bring back an opponent into a matchup here, depending on how much and how well that church can heal everything around it. And if your opponent, or if the player plays smart enough, they can obviously get a max value out of the church here just by kind of maneuvering where the heals can sometimes end up. Sometimes not trading to certain locations, taking trades that end up killing a unit here, just so that way they can navigate to where the church heal will end up going. So for that reason, church will be our first S tier card, and well deserved at that. Next up, you've got Crumbling Archives, another Crusader building. We got to bounce back between one and the other. Crumbling Archives, though, for me, feels okay. I think it might be a B tier. I mean, it could also be a C tier, in my opinion. I think what kind of brings it up into the B tier is the combo potential it has with the church. Being able to play both at the same time, allowing the Crumbling Archives to draw, take damage, and then heal up from the church. It's kind of provide this infinite double draw source that's not Tarius. Can be pretty cheeky and pretty useful. And of course, just getting the draw value entirely is big. Now, I know that I placed the Dwarven Archives, which essentially is the same thing when you consider both of them will end up drawing you at least 2 cards. I think, though, that the Archives being a 1 draw, most likely can be pretty rough here. I mean, again, outside of Dwarf decks. But meanwhile, Crumbling Archives can be at least 2 draw for any other deck. So that's why it's going to go a little bit higher than the Dwarven Archives. And then finally, we got another building for this rotation. It is House of Daggers. Daggers is interesting. Ooh, Daggers is interesting. I think it might also be maybe... I want to give it a B tier, in all honesty, but I know that it has the potential to be an A tier. You know what? I might go ahead and please some people with this one, but House of Daggers will become an A tier card on this list. I think being able to ramp out into some big plays as you progress in the game here is just very, very good. I've seen House of Daggers used to great effects here in multiple yellow-green decks to either put out big, stupid bunguses by turn 5 or turn 4. And at that point, that's just what the gravy's supposed to be, right? You want that kind of big ramp early in order to provide the game with, you know, a Minotaur turn 3, or, you know, Mordok turn 5, or so on and so forth. Or, you know, most famously, Craxus turn 2, right? It is something for sure. It really is. And so, because of that, I think House of Daggers deserves an A tier slot on this list. And next up, we've got Dancing Swords. Now, Dancing Swords is the, or a 4-drop option, neutral option for normally Awakened decks, although I have seen it used elsewhere. Usually maybe decks that try to get some big bunguses out earlier to do some big damage with some spell buffs. I feel like it's going to be another B tier for me. It's okay. Nothing too extraordinary on either spectrum, though. It can be pretty bad, but also pretty useful, depending on why you're using it. I mean, it is what it is. It's fine. Again, nothing huge, wild, or special, so I think it's going to deserve its rightful place in the B tier. Following that, you've got Darkfire. Darkfire, the sacrifice in Warlocks for 4 gold. It does a big, I think, 4 damage around the 3x3 square, right? If I remember correctly. I think, honestly, again, for this one, gonna have to maybe slap it in the C tier. We don't really see sacrifice used all too often, and if it is, it's usually for stuff like the Kargrim decks or for stupid fast aggro decks. I kind of just want that extra damage at the end there. So like, say they got a lumberjack, they rush it up, they pop it in, and then they can maybe like dark fire it for more damage and then the draw. It is fine. It is what it is. I think there are better sacrifice tools, cheaper ones at that as well, but Darkfire, not necessarily the worst. I think it has been used to great effect before, so I just feel like it doesn't really accomplish much these days. So for that, we're going to have to give it a C. Next up, you've got Detonate. Detonate, the 3 gold Warlock spell that kind of blows up everything around it for 5 when a unit does die. Probably go with the... Oh, again, I picked up the wrong card. Again, going to have to probably go with the with the B tier here. I think Detonate is a very unique option for some decks. We've seen it be used quite effectively in the Arbiter burn versions of No Interactions, where you rush down the Arbiter, you smack him for 4, you disappear the Arbiter, and that triggers Detonate to deal 5 to the surrounding area. It's been very brutal, very devastating, but I think even outside of the deck as well, it's just quite an effective aggro tool for decks that kind of rush in a lot of their units turn 1, turn 2, and then they set up the Detonate by turn 3, allowing their units to end up doing more damage upon their deaths. And of course, keeping the control aspect of their decks up in order to continue to punish their opponent here by rushing, again, more units then down the face. So I think Detonate, a fine card. One that deserves a B tier, though, as it doesn't really play a large part outside of, I think, those two main strategies per se. So, yeah. Next up, you've got Combustion. Combustion, the 5 gold global spell that allows units to deal explosive damage, or 2 explosive damage, excuse me, to a 3x3 area for every combo they initiate in. I think, again, gonna have to be a C tier. I know this card has potential, but we just have not seen it as of recently. I think like Swarm deck can maybe take advantage of this. Mystic Rats, maybe. I'm surprised that we haven't seen Mystic Rat Temple Combustion really take off, but I think that's just because of the way that Combustion works with Temple of the 5 Gods. It's a little bit different, maybe. I don't think so. Maybe we just haven't tested it yet because Combustion is 5 gold. Not exactly cheap to play, so it is a lot out of your turn to deal that kind of damage here. And if you don't have a lot of units on board already, Combustion essentially becomes more and more dead in your hand, the less and less units you have on the board. So for that reason, Combustion will be in the C tier. And then of course you got Dino Rider, one of the potential dwarfs that you can value archives off of. I think Dino Rider, ooh, I know, I feel like a broken record. I'm alternating between C and B, man. I probably shouldn't, but like, it is what it is. I think Dino Rider is just a big body, but we don't see it too often because it is weak in the attack points. You really only see it when there's dwarves around in a deck here, so that way it can become a 6/6. Or for a dinosaur deck, because you want the dinosaur body to then pop the nest, in which case then Dino Rider becomes much better, but yeah. I think a B tier is fine enough for him. He doesn't really do that much outside of his archetypes anyway, so for that reason, he will stay in that tier. Next up, you've got Disintegrate. Disintegrate would be another one of the A tier cards, in my opinion. Reason for this is that Disintegrate being able to pop Last Will cards while not triggering said Last Will is pretty overlooked and pretty valuable. When you've got things like the Lumberjack draw early on, the Salahar Rider, Banshee Miner spells, and all these different Last Will effects that can be really devastating on certain board states, having that Disintegrate in hand is very useful to just kind of punch the unit down, say no thank you, and move on with your day. This does not go into the S tier though, because it is a unit target only, so you cannot necessarily hit the building for 3, or else we'd be seeing this a lot more than we would now, or than we do now, excuse me. But I think it's fine where it is as a card here, and probably deserves the A tier, just because it's a 3 damage burn spell that can easily negate any Last Will effects on board. So I think Disintegrate will deserve that spot. Following that, then you got the Fist of Donic. I do think Donic is going to be in the B tier as well. A very underrated Viking spell, in my opinion, here. Now, that is because probably you maximize the value of this when you play it with a Dwarven Miner or Dwarven Paladin, etc. But I do think a lot of people overlook that Donic is permanent chain on any unit. No matter if it's a dwarf or not, it will maintain that 2 chain lightning damage that can be used any point at any time, even when your opponent is retaliating against your unit. The Donic chain will still trigger, and that permanent chain is something that we don't see too often in the game. Either the units have chain lightning built into them, like Ragnar or Yarm, or they're granted them by Temple of the 5 Gods. Everything else that kind of gives chain lightning is temporary. So for Donic to be another permanent chain producer, does bring more to the table than other spells like itself. So for that reason, plus actually the +3 health on a unit here is pretty important if it's a dwarf. You make Dwarven Miner into a 3/6, a Paladin into a 2/8, I believe. 2/8 or 2/7. I think maybe 7 because it is a 4 HP. It's a 2/4, yeah. So Dying becomes a 2/7, but still very powerful bodies here that you can continue to extend further with those global buffs in the next turns here. Throw down an armory to follow up, and now you've got a 4/7 with chain 2, so on and so forth. So I think for that reason, Donic will be another B tier inclusion for this list. Next up, you've got Doom Ship, my old favorite. God, this is so painful. I'm gonna have to give it a C tier. If we're looking at it from a unbiased standpoint, Doom Ship is fine as a range unit. It is big and chunky as a 4/5. That's why it's out of the F tier. But the slow, man, the slow really does kill the card entirely. The slow, sluggish, lug my ass on the battlefield type beat that the or that the pirate ship provide, or the Doom Ship provides. Holy shit! I just took down a trip down memory lane. I think the limited mobility that Doom Ship offers is pretty detrimental to the card, even if you have a big range body because of it, you know, like Darkbender. Yeah, it doesn't really accomplish a whole lot, I think, unless you're giving it like movement buffs or the Phantom Strike or the Scope or what have you. But I think for that reason, mainly the limited mobility and the slow nature of the card, I think it's gonna actually not the slow nature, the sluggish nature of the card, I think it's gonna have to stay in the C tier. As much as it pains me, I know Doom Ship was and still is, you know, my card, but it's fallen from grace, and I will have to come to accept that someday. So makes sense. Following that, you've got Dragon Search. Now, I think Dragon Search has to be another one of those A tier cards. Search has been making some moves recently in the metagame now that we've established rank ladders again. People are experimenting with decks, and we've found that dragons are pretty popular again. And Dragon Search is a great card to have in those decks, being able to pull from any of the Drake pool, things like Shadow Drake, Faithful. Actually, I don't think Faithful's in the pool anymore, if I remember correctly. I'd be wrong. But regardless, Ice Drake, Fire Drake, Green Drake, Shadow Drake, all those being in the mix here for pulls are pretty incredible on its own. But additionally, the +1/+1 boost that you get to said unit without any sort of cost restrictions or cost limitations or movement limitations because of that is really, really big. So for that reason, I think Dragon Search will be another A tier contender. You could maybe argue S tier, but I think it's fine in the A tier for now because it is, after all, a 1 gold cycle spell. Not even a cycle, you're picking up out of thin air for this. So yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. Next up, the War Elephant on our list here. I think War Elephant again has to be a C tier. It's just a big body that can deal siege damage, or a fair body actually, in the 4-drop that can do some special damage when hitting into a building. Beyond that, I don't think it really does a whole lot to the game for you, most likely. Its stat lines are very easily replicated. You can find things like Barbarian that actually have better value base stat wise. But, you know, War Elephant does have the siege. Regardless, I think War Elephant hasn't really done a hell of a lot. So I think it's going to be one of those, again, C tier cards that kind of hangs out and with the rest of the bunch here. A lot of good cards and rares that can have the potential to do some great stuff. But unfortunately, were kind of put down in such a way that they actually ended up in the rares because their value is not at their peak performance. That's how rarities do technically work after all. But yeah, War Elephant, a fine card, going to have to be a C from me. And then, of course, you got Faith Everlasting. Where did you go? There you go. Honestly, it's just a 3 heal that rebounds your hand for 0 gold, but that rebound has to be played somewhere else. You can get better heal elsewhere. There is so much better heal option than Faith Everlasting, and I think it exists just because it is another minor spell for the pot. Not much further to say there, really. It is what it is. It's fine, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend going out of your way to craft it. It just feels wrong. Following that, you've got the Fencer now coming into play here. Fencer. Oh, Fencer. What am I going to do with you? Maybe C tier as well. You could argue B, but I think in this environment, Fencer just falls a little too quickly to make the repost really matter. Yeah, I don't really have much anything. Fencer's kind of a weird one. It really is. I wasn't really sure where to put him, but I don't know. I feel like C tier might be right. You could argue B tier though. I think that's definitely fair to say. For sure. Next up on our list, we've got the Tarius Files. Now, Tarius Files, I think, has to be a card that actually, surprisingly enough, joins our A tier up here. Tarius Files has been used to great effect over the last few years in Last Will decks, in No Interaction, mainly because of its strong synergy with cards like Flamestorm, where you can pop the board with the Flamestorm and then get the value from the files by drawing 2 cards at discounted costs. And of course, whether they are just to further burn your opponent here from No Interactions or power up Andrew in Last Will, I think both of those options are fairly strong and has led Tarius Files to be included in many decks. Even in some of the ones that the files shouldn't really be a part of, outside of Warlocks here, because people expect that 2-draw to come eventually. I think people kind of want that in their decks. They want that cheat draw, and they know that if they can maybe block it in front of their castle without an opponent having any sort of removal options, if they have chain maybe, they feel like they're going to get the value at some point in the game here. I think that's just pretty good. I know that kind of feels like a dud for an A tier, but I mean, I've never been the biggest fan of Tarius Files, so I can't really relate to it too much, but hey, I think it works out for some people, and because of that, it will sit, in our A tier. Next up, you've got the Fire Drake here. Fire Drake's an interesting one. I think we're gonna have to give it a B tier. It is a fine explosive dragon, can do some great stuff with Lightning Blade and Chain Lightning, but I don't really does anything else beyond that. I mean, it's got the dragon tag for some dragon synergy, but yeah, I think not much else to explain there other than the fact that you do have the potential for chain explosive built into Fire Drake. It's just that it doesn't really come with great stats elsewhere, being that 2/5, so it is what it is. Next up, you got the Forbidden City, the draw 3 discard one. I made my thoughts on discard pretty clear. You know what? I can just have Jay fight with me. It's fine, whatever. I'm gonna go in the C tier. I mean, the draw 3 is useful, but you guys know from the cockatrice statement how I feel about losing the cards out of your hand here. It's not my cup of tea, not my style, especially in a scenario like this where you don't get any benefits from putting things in, or discarding anything per se. So I think for that reason, Forbidden City, I almost call it Forbidden Shitty because I'm so used to saying that. Forbidden City is just a draw 3 card, to draw 3, discard 1, big funny cycle for sure, but I think it's fine in the seats here. Following that, you've got the Frost Giant, I believe. Yeah, that is the Frost Giant in there. I think Frost Giant again might have to join the C tier of cards. I think when you look at the 6 gold, you have a lot more stronger options other than Frost Giant. And sure, Frost Giant does get some pretty funny freeze stuff going, but also a body at 4 attack at 6 gold. A little underwhelming on that stat line there, I will say. Despite it being 7 HP like Minotaur, I just think there are better options, especially even in the neutral category for 6 drops. Minotaur and Griffin come to mind immediately. So despite having that, freeze, sometimes even targeted freeze, if you can navigate your way to having that 1 unit left on board, it kind of feels like it could be doing a little bit more than it currently is, and especially in its price point per se. Following that, Frozen Storm, oh boy. I think Frozen Storm might have to be an F tier card in my opinion. I know it seems a little blasphemous there, but we have so many better freezing options. The Lich, the Freezing Pillar, Ice Drake to an extent, which is I think coming up here on the list very soon. And of course, while you do get the whole board frozen for 5 gold under Frozen Storm, again, the discard mechanic is real and does hurt this card a lot. So I think for that reason, it's just gonna have to sit in our F tier. I just don't think it's a great card. But again, I think some people can probably argue with me on that one. It is a very useful stall tool. I will give it that to. I will give that to it. But I don't think it does much other than just that singular purpose, which is stall and lose card. And then what else we got? The furnace next up on our list here. God, I think I have to do the same thing I did with the for the storm here. Another keep your shard worthy card, in my opinion. It kind of sits there, does some damage on initiative, acts as an obstacle, but I think if you want to play obstacles, you know, you have your lava font as a stronger option because it's got much more health. Well, actually, I think what, 2 more 8 points of HP, considering that I think furnace is maybe 6 gold. I just don't like the furnace. It feels pretty dead and pretty unnecessary because you already do have things like the flaming pillar, the lava font, if you will, and the molten pillar that can do a little bit more than what furnace does provide. So yeah, I think for that reason it's going to be an F tier. Moving up the list though, you've got Green Drake. Now, similar to Dragon Search, I think Green Drake's been making a lot of noise lately, a lot of headline. So it might just be meta bias relevancy, but I think Green Drake might also be another A tier card. It's able to get easy buffs from any other dragon, including itself. So if you have 2 Green Drakes in a deck, they can kind of boost each other. But on top of that, the flying aspect is very huge. We know that the flying has to be paid attention to and respected at all times, or else you can kind of have your opponent swoop over with a flying unit and pop you for big damage. But yeah, I think Green Drake just an incredible card that can self-boost, fly. It's got a lot of positives to it, a lot of big benefits that not only the dragons can take advantage of, for other decks that want to maybe utilize a slightly bigger body in their decks. So for that reason, Green Drake will be sitting in our A tier. Next up on our list is Grendel. Now, Grendel's a bit of an interesting body here. 6/7 for 5 gold, but of course gives that +2/+2 when defeated. Although I think nowadays Grendel has been used quite well to where the +2/+2 most of the time doesn't matter as much, and for that reason, he might be joining up in our B tier. A solid body at 5 gold, 6/7 able to do a lot of damage, combined with globals can just be even more of a pain in the ass. So Grendel is just incredibly chonky stat lines. Let him, I think, escape as being a B tier card. Next up, you've got a Harmonic Balance, the ninja spell that, of course, sets everything to 2. Yeah, I mean, again, more or less of a meme card here, per se. I don't want to dunk too hard on Harmonic Balance. I think people have used it quite effectively in combination with things like Flamestorm. I personally don't think it is just sort of, again, similar to Suit of Armor. It is a meme, funny, haha card. If you want to go on the more, competitive side of things here, you want to look at some other options aside from the Harmonic Balance. Next up, Rat Infested Hovel. Oh boy, there is no other place that this belongs other than S tier. This building is everywhere. The ability to produce the rat bodies consistently and constantly across an entire game can really annoy the hell out of people. And depending on what you want to do with those rats, whether they are a part of your swarm deck strategy that, you know, provides the globals and stuff like that to them, or if you want them for other reasons per se, just having some small tokens come out as defensive value in the early game, whatever the case may be. Rat Hovel is one of those generically strong, well, not generically, probably just strongest spawners out of 2. Just most important, biggest spawner in the game currently. And so with everything you can do with it and for how good it really is, it will be another one of those cards to join our S tier. Following that up, Aijutsu. Probably C tier. It's okay, but of course, like with most traps, they can be easily diverted if your opponent is paying attention. I think Aijutsu is one of those cards that, you know, it's pretty big in the early game, but maybe as you get progressively later and later into the game, when you have something like a rat hit a griffin and Aijutsu activates, it doesn't matter if the unit, the griffin's taking 5, it's not dying, and thereby the rat will still die, effectively nullifying the whole intention of the trap. That, you know, it's very easy to outplay Aijutsu is what I'm saying these days. So if you can kind of pick up that Aijutsu is the card, most likely you can find an easy way to kind of counterplay this 90% of the time. Following that, you've got Ice Drake. I guess Ice Drake could be another B tier. I mean, the freeze is useful. The cost point is good. Not much else to really say on the Ice Drake, though. He does have some strong dragon synergies. And again, Dragon's been making some moves. But I think that's about it. I mean, someone could probably give me more for Ice Drake in the comments, but I don't know. I think Ice Drake is just one of those B tier fine cards. It's there. It's there. Next up, Hidden Intent. Again, similar harmonic balance. This will be another F tier card. Very much, again, like a joke card, if you will, and really only exists to make another minor spell for the minor spell pool. I don't really think it has any sort of big applications outside of just being a random pull. So, yeah, for that reason, the Hidden Intent will be another F tier card. Following that, Eternal Judgment. I think perhaps C as well. Again, pretty easily outplayed if your opponent knows what's up or can predict what's up based on some given context. The damage is good. It's 5 points of damage that can easily pop something that maybe is smaller and comes to attack first, so you can avoid taking the damage. Or if it's bigger, weaken it significantly to the point where something else can take it out. It does a great job in that regard, but I don't think it really has seen enough playtime to warrant a higher ranking, unfortunately. So, for that reason, it will be another C tier card. Last Stand. I think maybe an F tier. I think you have better resolve spells out there, like Plea of the Righteousness, and the 1/2 buff is something that can be very easily filled by the Void of Globals. So, yeah, Last Stand is kind of one of those cards again that you don't see too much out there, so you can't really say for certain, but I figured it's gonna be an F tier. Why not? And again, if you want to let me know if I'm wrong, feel free to let me know in the comments. Following that, you got the Master at Arms now. Probably another B tier, honestly. Yeah, B tier feels about right. His attack ability is pretty crazy, but the 4 HP is, or the 4 gold, 4 HP scenario kind of makes him a bit weaker than what he could be doing. But not a bad card, I would say. The attack buff is still super, super important. Following that, Might of the Minotaur here. Gonna have to be another, actually, another B tier card. If I can drag it over here. The reason being I'm putting this in the B tier over the others is because the 3/3, the 3 attack and the health is permanent, as opposed to something like Aijutsu, which just has the +4 attack for that turn. Getting that permanent life boost is so valuable to some units here. If they're able to kind of stick around longer, they will opt to do more damage than less. So I think if you're looking to kind of keep units on the board here, even outside of trap decks too, where you can get draw off the dojos, I think the Minotaur trap is one of the better traps out there, although topped by one, which we'll get to later on in this list. Next up, you got Mugging. Hell of a card Mugging is. I think probably C tier. Daggerstorm is a much better removal option in Pirates for problematic cards, and I think Mugging just is there for treasure. Like, if you want the treasure to ramp into something big in the following turn, if your deck relies on that ramp, then sure, run the Mugging. But if you want a good pirate removal, run Daggerstorm, because that does more damage and can spread out to potentially hit more than one unit. So, I sound like a Looney Tunes character when I talk that fast. Following that, you've got Multi-Strike on deck. Multi-Strike, I think, another A tier card. Has a lot of ninjas to kind of flourish in OTK shenanigans for years now, and at this point I just feel like it's its own deck, really. Multi-strike ninja decks exist out there solely to deliver big damage. Actually, E-strike decks too. I guess multi-strike and E-strike kind of fall along the same line, to be honest. They both like to use that dual attack point ability, except Eternity Strike will do it 3 times over. 1 for the hit and then 2 after. Multi-strike will just do 2 and has some other weaknesses, but it is a reliable card, I would say, in the 4 gold slot. So for that reason, I will go ahead and keep multi-strike in the A tier. Following that, you've got the Mystic Dojo, the trap draw, or the draw card for traps. It draws traps, that too. I don't know. I don't think we've seen a whole lot of trap activity as of lately, and it kind of feels like Dojo is just existing out there. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a C tier. Nothing against the draw per se, but again, it just doesn't really feel like traps have been making a whole lot of splashes to justify the Dojo being a more valuable card than it currently stands. Even though, again, it does the same thing with Dojo, which, by the way, we'll grab Dojo. Oh, hold on. We'll grab Dojo here. I'm going to put that in the B tier because it does get more utilization than the Mystic Dojo. While the Dojo is... the Mystic Dojo, excuse me, is for traps and usually doesn't have a lot of room elsewhere. I think Sleeping Dojo has made it pretty evident that you can throw it in a lot of different zones with Awakened cards and still get some pretty insane value, even if your deck is not totally dedicated to the Awakened strategy. So I think for that reason, that's where I'm going to rank my dojos. Mystic Dojo over at C, and then the Sleeping Dojo a point higher in the B tier. Next up, you've got Mystic Journey. Now, it's a bit of a tough one here, because Mystic Journey does fall, I think, either in A or S. It's definitely very high up there. I think the issue is, though, that not every deck can utilize initiative abilities outside of a few select ones. And because Journey itself is in Vikings, you do have to kind of limit what your initiative does land on. So I think for that reason, while it being a very strong and powerful card, it will be another one of those A tier cards. It's good, but you know, you only can use it with a couple of powerful select units like the Rat King from Mystic Rats, Dragon Knight, Yenneroth. There are some options that could totally utilize Mystic Journey, but you always have to have Vikings attached to the deck regardless, which can be a bit of a hindrance depending on what you want to actually use the Journey for. So for that reason, Journey will be in our A tier, though. Still a very powerful and fine card indeed. Next up, Nimble Retreat. Nimble Retreat will be seeing an F tier. It's just another card for the minor spell pool, really. You know, +3 movement, zipped around the board, but no attack. It's fine, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it's worth a main deck slot. It's a minor spell card. It really is. Next up, you've got the Nunchuck Nun. I think Nunchuck's gonna have to be in our C tier. Mainly because the stat line doesn't feel like it's well justified enough to warrant including in decks nowadays. Even when decks like Swarm or Last Will, where it should theoretically shine, people don't play the Nun ever because they feel like Nun doesn't do enough damage to justify playing her for 4 gold. Even with the global buffs, they get up to what, 3, 6, 5, no, 3, 5, and then, no, 3, 6. Yeah, no, I was right the first time. None should be a 2, 5. Nun's a 2, 5, so then 3, 6 with the global, so on and so forth. It just doesn't feel worth it. It feels slower. It feels like it gets outclassed by a lot of other options, and so for that reason, None will be sitting in our C tier. Next up, you've got Pacifism. Probably the C tier. Pacifism as a pseudo removal could be utilized very well, but can very easily backfire when you have your opponent play globals after Pacifism, creating some big, stupid, like 1/9, 1/10 units here, which may not be doing a whole lot, but are very difficult to remove from the equation without having to do a lot more. So while he may not have a lot of attack power after Pacifism and then global, you still it's a risk. It's a risk to run Pacifism as your removal option for Crusaders, but considering they don't have any other options, Pacifism is realistically one of the only from hand Crusader removal spells in a way. Again, pseudo removal. But yeah, that's also why it's out of the F tier, because you can't actually utilize it as a way to nullify big attackers. So yeah, that will be where the Pacifism ends up there. Dwarven Paladin itself, shoot. Where do I want to put this one? maybe C tier. It feels weird. I'm giving a lot of cards C tier here, but they don't really. I mean, Dwarven Paladin just kind of whacks you for 2, heals everything for 1, keeps going until it dies. The Dwarven Body to synergize with the Mithril and the weapons, but I don't really feel like it does much outside of that, so it will be in our C tier. Plea of the Righteous will be a B tier card, another kind of overlooked card with Donic. Resolve is very annoying, especially in the early game when you don't have a lot going on the board right then and there. So being able to remove things or protect things is actually better with the plea, feels like it's a good inclusion to have in a variety of different decks here. Again, underutilized. I think people run things like books more often than not for more card draw over Plea of the Righteous, or I tend to give more 2 gold units the space that Plea would have taken up, but yeah, I think it's fine. It is a good card, but one that really hasn't been tapped into super well, I think, over the last few years. Following that up, you got the Flame Prince. I think it's going to be an A tier card from me here. Flame Prince being a big little boy that can buff up continuously in the corner for most of the early game of a matchup here, to where you can have a big old 7/8, a big old 6/7 rush out to the board here and cause a tremendous amount of problems for your opponent if they don't use something to get rid of that Flame Prince earlier. Burn, Companion, what have you. I think Flame Prince is a very good way to bait out some of those cards as well, because again, if he grows to be this big unit, he becomes much more unstoppable for people to deal with. So for that reason, Flame Prince will sit in our A tier. Hungering Pumpkin, F tier. It's 3/3, but you initiative discard, which is very, very brutal. Unlike Cockatrice, where it was a last will, so you could actually keep the Cockatrice alive to prevent that discard, Pumpkin is just discard out of the gate. And even though it is 3/3, very, very easily counterable in today's environment, so I think Pumpkin just doesn't really fit anymore. He will be sitting in the F tier. Following that up, you got Reanimate. Reanimate will be, I think, another one of our... Ooh. I don't know if I want to put this in... I feel like if in the right call, Reanimate can be quite a game winner. So maybe an S tier for now, but I also recognize that if you want to put it in the A tier, you can. Because I think Reanimate decks need that dedicated lineup of cards to make it really work out well. Yeah, I think with that, it feels good though when you actually are able to pull out a 5/4 unit Reanimate and do some big damage across the board here, which is, what can happen. Putting out 4 wraiths is not easy for people to deal with, but on the other hand, it does take quite a lot of work to get there. So now that I'm saying this, maybe what I do here actually swap around those 2. I feel like that might be a little bit better as a mid chart adjustment per se. But again, I could be wrong. I just feel like this is maybe the correct choice here, because Reanimate a little harder to actually pull off than Multi-Strike. So I don't think it would be fair to put Multi-Strike in A tier and then keep the Reanimate up there as well. I think this is a better showcase to just show where exactly. Like, you need to do more work for Reanimate, and then other than Multi-Strike, excuse me. So with that being said, Multi-Strike promoted to S tier and Reanimate in the A tier. All right, next up is Rally of the Town. I feel like Rally could be a good B tier card. Maybe C tier. I think the multiple bodies you get out of the Rally for swarm purposes or Reanimate could be pretty useful. Creating those into 3/3s or 4/4s with globals as well. It just feels pretty good to have just that big amount of bodies come out for 1 price. So for that reason, Rally will be a B tier. Next up is Replacement Technique, the 4 gold. I mean, again, I would save your shards here on this one. It's more of a meme strategy, if anything, although, yeah, we could make the argument that it is maybe more useful than some of the other cards here in the F tier, as like a pseudo bounce card. I just think it's just very, very meme potential, very haha funny. I won't doubt that it is very haha funny, but you don't really see it in rank too often for a reason. So for that, the Replacement Technique will receive an F. Forest Revolt, will probably C tier feels about right. Yeah, I think the Force Revolt creating the one Trent that becomes a 3/5. It's okay, but nothing big unless you carry multiple Trents on the board at the time of Force Revolt here, which really doesn't happen super often, it feels like nowadays. So, and also 4 gold. It's quite expensive. You could play a Trent turn 2, lose it by turn 3, and now the Force Revolt in your hand here will only produce 1 3/5 Trent. And that at 4 gold you could be doing a little bit better than a 3/5 on the board. So for that reason, Revolt will also be a C tier card. Risky Business now coming in the lineup here. Again, another F tier. Minor spell card spell here, but you can make the argument that it's useful for school decks and greed and ramp decks and stuff like that here, but discard as well at the end of the turn. Not exactly a fan of this one, so we're gonna have to put it in the F tier. Next up, you've got the Dwarven Scope. Dwarven Scope gonna come pop right into the A tier. Although again, probably could make the argument that it is also an S tier worthy card. The range and the +1 HP, super useful for the Dwarven Scope here, creating these melee range threats here that become really stupid to counteract. Things like Mordok getting range is annoying. Any sort of combo unit getting the range is annoying. So on and so forth. There's a lot of great potential things that you could do with a Dwarven Scope, making a range unit's range even longer as well. Very funny, but yeah, I think A tier can fit, maybe an S tier. You can make the argument. I would totally like to have that discussion as well. But yeah, I think that is a fine ranking for it. And then following that, Secret Dragon, going to come up here into the S tier real quick. Secret Dragon is another strong trap card, but kind of falling in the same space as Might of the Minotaur. But unlike the Might of the Minotaur, the Secret Dragon will actually kind of heal and take use of any sort of existing buffs on a unit here, making it even more powerful than what you could see off of a Might of the Minotaur trap card being played. We've seen it create some stupidly big drakes over the past few years that can instantly swing for game-ending damage if played properly with some of the fancy setup stuff done in between. It is just an incredible trap card, one that is probably, again, the most powerful trap card to exist currently in the format. So for that reason, again, Secret Dragon will be sitting in our S tier. All right, next up is the Shadow Drake. I think Shadow Drake is a fine B tier card. Not super strong in the stat lines, but the stealth is pretty useful. I can drag into the goddamn B tier slot, my word. It is a good card, I think, in Drake focused decks and with things like big ninja OTKs. It's a stealth target that can get close to the board without being seen or targeted, so I think a very useful inclusion in that department as well. But again, the stat lines are nothing to super write home about. 4/4, fine, but I think I think fair is a better word to say for that. I think, like Master at Arms here, I think it is a fine, fair stat line for cards in its range. So for that, B tier for the Shadow Drake. Shockwave, hello. Oh, not Sniper. Hello, there you are. I just moved Sniper down a hell of a lot, but it doesn't matter. Let me just bring this back up here. Shockwave, F tier. Again, minor spell for the minor spell. Funny, 2 damage, AoE, push stuff, but you're not really including the main tech all too often, so it will be in our F tier. Sharpshooter in the C tier as well for more follow-up here. 5/3, very easily able to get removed from play, like with Disintegrate, Blue Firebolt, Dragon's Fire, so on and so forth. It's got some, funny attack stuff for sure, but I think Sharpshooter really doesn't accomplish a whole lot these days. Very easy to get removed as well, so it'll be in our C tier. Special Delivery for the follow-up in the F as well. The stun is just not useful as a trap effect per se. And of course, your opponent can easily play around the explosive stun that will get other units trapped in. That's the whole point of the card. Like, oh, but surprise, you play near other units, they all get stunned. It doesn't feel valuable at all. You can do a whole lot more than special delivery. Plus, where you have Avalanche with the kind of like 2-turn freeze shenanigans stall, delivery doesn't have that. And so I think that makes delivery a lot worse than Avalanche in that same regard. So for that reason, delivery will be in our F tier. Spirit Crash up next here. I think C again. Funny win con card, but ultimately not super powerful or reliable all too often. Again, probably gonna get some feedback on that, but for the most part, I think it's fine. It just doesn't do anything massive like multi-strike does as a win con. I don't know why my hands are doing this, by the way. We're going back here, folks. That's how unhinged I am, by the way. Side note, I've been at this for an hour recording and ranking, and it's probably by like an hour long by now, I'd imagine, in the recording, and now I'm thinking the side track doesn't help, but that's just how many cards are on this goddamn list. Oh my word. Following that, Spidefish. I think Spidefish probably B tier. The last will is pretty funny to subtract gold from your opponent here, potentially make it so that they don't actually play their turn based on certain gold counts they got in their hand. And the 3/3 stat line is fine, but nothing to write home about either. So fair card, I would have to say B tier on that. Gravestalker up next. Another C tier for you, my friend. You just you don't really do a lot these days, do you? You're 4/3, unoptimal stats, get popped before the zombies come out. And even when the zombies do come out, they're 2/2s. And really, Gravestalker doesn't accomplish a whole lot these days, so he's gonna go sit in the C tier. Stone Dragon Statue, probably another B tier card here. The Stone Dragon is pretty useful. Being able to pop out a specific Drake here with an extra attack. Sort of like the Dragon Search, but not the +1/+1. So a little bit worse in that regard. But instant summoning, which is very useful. You can get maybe a discounted green Drake off of this. Or stuff like Fire Drake, Ice Drake, which are a little bit stronger. So I think for that reason, Stone Dragon fits in our B tier. Following that, you got the Sushi Shack. Probably, ooh boy. Probably an F tier card here. Sushi Shack does not feel worth running most of the time here. If you want movement buff, you should run the movement spells like Swiftness to get some cycle value out of it as well. I mean, I guess the Sushi Shack is permanent, but it's also random targeting, so that kind of throws it off a little bit too. I just feel like it doesn't really accomplish a whole lot. So for that reason, Sushi Shack will be in our F tier. Moving right along, Talabos. Now, Talabos, I had a hard time figuring out where to throw him. Maybe B tier. I think you can argue with me on this one as well. But the lifesteal, I think, really elevates this card to a higher status. Sure, you have to sacrifice something, but who says you can't sacrifice a zombie or a token creature like a rat or something along the lines you don't necessarily need, like a lumberjack? I think with that easy to sacrifice card in play around the early game, because Talos is only 3 gold after all, and getting a 3/5 with lifesteal at that point, that's pretty good. I would take that most of the time. So for that reason, I would say Talos is a B tier card. And then, whew, boy, no explanation needed on this one. Let's go ahead and boink Temple up to an S tier. Chain Lightning, we know how powerful Chain Lightning is. Give that to every unit in your deck. It's going to be a wild time. A lot of decks have utilized Temple, continue to utilize Temple as a global for their Viking decks. So for that reason, I don't think we need to talk about it any further. Temple of the Five Gods, big S tier. All right, and following that, Throne of the Emperor. God, probably C tier. You can tell these last few cards I'm really struggling to find a place for, or give like more proper reasoning to. Throne is okay. It's a 5 health building to big boy, but the balance strategy feels hit or miss in today's modern metagame. So I think it's fair. I don't think it's a problem, or you should easily be running it everywhere. But like I don't know. Throne kind of stopped me, to be honest. Could be B or C, but maybe I feel like C. I kind of feel like C. I don't know. You could make the argument though. Again, some of these last few ones have been a little bit harder to judge. Injured Trent, B tier, 3/3 for 2 gold. It's a fine early game body. Not much else to really talk about there. Kind of on the same lines as like Dwarven Miner and the Questing Knight. It kind of exists as the Druid 3/3, which can synergize with the Forest Revolt if you have it. So I think for that reason, Injured Trent will be a B tier card. Treasure Hunt, F tier. The global is so much easier to find, or the buff is so much easier to find in globals. The ramp is not super powerful. It's a minor spell. It's an F tier. It's a big old F tier. Bridge Troll, probably C tier. Funny, but not exactly big. The 2/2 body for 2 gold, very easily removed from the equation in most cases. But I mean, it is funny to have that debuff, that loss of gold for a turn. It just doesn't really accomplish as much else outside of that. So for that reason, Bridge Troll in the C tier. Tunnel Escape, God, I'd probably B tier. Same reasoning as the Rally of the Town from earlier. It's just multiple bodies for a cheap price. Some of this which can synergize more well with the Dwarven spells, like the Mithril and the weapons. So yeah, probably a good B tier there. Construct, F tier. Not you. F tier. Stop running this thing. It's awful. It blows up. It doesn't accomplish a hell of a lot. Stop running it. It's garbanzo. Vermin Tunnels, also F. The rats don't really help much, and I mean, unless you're running like what, global, and in which case you get, you know, a Rat King's worth of rats, but they're the rats. You can just play the Rat King, get the Mystic value if you want to. So yeah, I think Vermin Tunnels. Maybe I'll change that, but I think F is fine. What did I do here? I think. Oh, okay. I moved Sushi Shack. That was not the intention. I think Sushi Shack was supposed to be an F tier. Whatever. You can tell I'm just off the rails. I'm unhinged at this point. Vampire, A. Lifesteal, big body, love to see it. Again, I'm struggling with my reasonings here, but it is a good card. I think Vampire, stronger of the Lifesteal bunch out there. The bigger attack value can mean he lifesteals, you know, more out of your opponent and gets more value off of that. So definitely a tier card. Were-Rat, maybe a C. The first strike is useful, but very easily removed. Very big burn bait. So yeah, I think Were-Rat probably at C. That sounds fine. Tower of Winter, F. No one runs this for freezing stuff. Freezing, they usually run for stall. I think no. Yeah, I don't know. I rarely see Tower of Winter. Feel like it doesn't really accomplish much. So yeah, that's gonna be a definite F tier card. Following that, Wolf, C tier. The value you can get off of Wolf is pretty funny, but you do need that dedicated beast build to make some proper use of him. I know turn 3 Wolf Rage is incredible in some games. I've used the combo to kind of seal away games very early, but I mean, I kind of get why people don't like it as well. It's 2/3. You're not getting much else out of it. Yeah, maybe that deserves a B tier. Maybe I'm being too harsh on it, but I did kind of say it was the worst out of the beast pulls in Call Beast, so I'll stick with my guns on this one. I think most people will say Wolf is not exactly an ideal card. Following that, you've got let's put Wraith. Let's put Wraith down first. I think Wraith is an underrated, overlooked A tier card. Its big chunky stat body with the fear element built into its attacks are very useful. Being able to push things back to deal chain lightning damage, potentially with the temple synergy, or just provide a big body that can stay alive long enough to pop a Rakanoth is very, very good. And of course, it being the biggest pull out of a Mordok is incredible. So yeah, very, very strong card, but very overlooked as a sort of main deck inclusion. So Potentially an A tier on that one, but also maybe B. I think I'm gonna give it some more love though, more love than it deserves. Maybe so. A tier for you. And then finally, goddamn, last card, Yarm Giant, A tier. A tier. I think when you look at it, not every deck can utilize Yarm super well. It kind of fights a position with Yenaroth, but it is a very strong card, being able to knock things back, do a big burst of Chain Lightning, incredible bits of damage all over the place here with Temple, and it's built-in Chain Lightning. Phenomenal card, definitely A tier or higher. I can definitely see it pushing into S as well. And with that, god damn, that is the final rare card ranking for cards and castles. A lot of cards, folks. 89 entries for this list. God damn. Alright. Well, with that being said, I think let's go ahead and properly close out this video now, because I am exhausted. And with that being said, folks, we come to the end of our tier list video. Again, a long one, but you know, there's just a lot of cards to rank. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. Be sure to let me know what you guys think of the ranks by leaving your comments, down in the comments section below and down if you're done. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, like the video if you enjoyed, share with your friends, all that fun stuff to help the channel grow and support us here on the YouTube platform. Of course, in the description below as well is the rare card tier list. If you want to rank the cards yourself or have a different opinion, please feel free to use that. Show me your rankings on the Discord and tell me why you might have moved some things into certain positions. I'm very curious to know where you guys maybe have some varying opinions on this topic. But yeah, I'm exhausted. A lot of cards. I think nearly about an hour and 20 on ranking cards. So I think I'm gonna be getting some stuff done elsewhere. So until next time, folks, stay gaming.